Hello and welcome to another episode of Issuer Update Clips. I'm Dimitri Giller, and today joining me is James Walker, CEO of ARS Strategic Mining Inc., ticker symbol ARS on the CSE. James, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Dimitri. Happy to be here.
All right, so let's get into it with the big news. ARS has completed and activated its second underground ventilation system at Lost Sheep. What does this milestone mean for the company, operationally speaking?
So this basically means now that we are essentially MSHOR compliant and we are allowed to begin full-scale mining operations. The adits are installed, the ventilation is installed, we've got all the heavy mining equipment, and now we can really start driving into the ore body and pulling it out. And now we could be doing that right now. We're just waiting for the final plant to complete construction, and then we're ready to go. We're ready to start pulling that material out and throwing it straight into the plant.
Great. So this was the final regulatory and safety requirement before production could begin. How significant was it to get this compliance piece across the finish line?
So this was not the biggest challenge, certainly, with the big mining operation. Like the whole ramp installation was a big operation, like 800 feet of like drifting a massive adit through the ground in a corkscrew configuration, and then offshoot adits to intersect the ore at different levels. I mean, that was a big operation with dozens of workers. Once we had obviously done that, to push through the ore body and then to create a shaft that jettisons up to the surface. I mean, by comparison, that was easy. It was just the final step that we needed so we could ensure that there was an escape hatch for people to get through. There was a secondary ventilation system in case there was any sort of cave-in or anything like that. And when you reach that sort of point, that's essentially the final domino that falls over that allows you to say, okay, good. Now we can just go full steam ahead and just start pulling out as much as we possibly can.
Right. So moving into full production, with the system in place, what's the next steps in terms of production ramp up?
So the next stage is that we are very close now to finishing our first processing plant. So we've got two. There's the metallurgical lumps plant, and then there's the acid spar plant, the flotation plant. And the metallurgical lumps plant is almost complete. We're essentially all the heavy equipment's in place, and now we're just putting the electrics in place. Once that's done, and the hope would be to have that really done imminently. If not the end of this year, then really early next year. And we can just start turning that on. And when we turn that on, we have first production, we have first revenues. We're essentially not a junior mining company at that point. We're a manufacturing company and making an industrial product. So that's the next big catalyst that's coming for us, is that first production going out the door.
So you've mentioned you've completed the spiral decline, so ore access drifts and surface processing infrastructure. How close are you to seeing the full-scale ore shipment leave the site?
Oh, we're close. Like at the moment, the mine is in a situation where we could pull ore out of it now. It's really just an aspect of having the processing plant ready to process that material and then ship it. There's a customer base just waiting for this stuff. So that's nice, is that the US imports far more of this material from abroad than we can produce on an annual basis. So there's plenty of people waiting for it. Really, it's that first plant. Once that's commissioned and that's operational, we can feed material in. At that point, there's no end of people that will take that product from us for their industrial uses.
Right. So how are you preparing the site and the workforce for a sustained industrial level production?
Well, we're fortunate. We've already got the mining guys. I mean, they were the ones who put in that drift and the adits and all those areas. So we've got them all locked down. And at the moment on the processing side, obviously we've got the construction crews there. They're all working 2 shifts. Essentially, we can get this finished as quickly as possible. But the nice part about this operation is it's not like a full-scale smelter operation where you need dozens, if not hundreds, of people operating. This is a much lower level operation where we only need sort of half a dozen people on one shift at any one time. So, and we're near to a city. Like the Delta City is just 2 miles away from us. So there's no shortage of personnel that can come in and work on these systems, whether that's in the warehousing, whether that's on the processing side, whether that's driving trucks, is the resources are there. So we've already de-risked on a lot of this. We've got almost all the personnel. And when we switch over from construction to production, even some of those construction crew members will shift over to that production from construction.
So Fluorspar isn't a household name, but it's designated as a critical mineral in Canada and the US. Can you remind our listeners why it's so strategically important?
Absolutely. And for anybody that doesn't know, a critical mineral basically means that it is vital to the economic security of that country. And the reason why it's vital to the economic security of both the US and Canada is because it's used in just about everything. It's used in steel, aluminum, hydrofluoric acid, fluorine, refrigeration units, lithium-ion batteries, cement, glass. To be honest, it's a strange thing when it's used so much in so many different products and we haven't heard about it. And the reason why is that essentially the operations in the US and Canada got shipped overseas, and the expertise and the personnel who worked in those industrial sectors also just left the industry. And so it's just not a household name anymore because there's nobody that works in it apart from us. And so a lot of the time when you're making presentations, you have to tell people exactly what Fluorspar is. But everybody's heard of the usage. Everyone knows what steel is. And when you tell them that you need, for each ton of steel, you need 20 pounds of Fluorspar, you begin to understand just how important and critical it is.
So you mentioned quite a few use cases for Fluorspar. How does ARS fit into the wider North American supply chain story?
So this is quite interesting because we are currently the only permitted Fluorspar mine in the whole of the United States. And so we will almost certainly be the first company to bring that production back to America. And so that's a big component of the story. And that's helped us get federal support, state level support, because there is a drive to reindustrialize. And ARS has been part of that story. And so where we fit into this is that there's sort of a de-globalization going on at the moment where countries are looking to become more sovereign and independent in certain areas, especially around resources and having that in-country capability. Certainly when it comes to what we want to do with our mine, that ties in very nicely with what the US government is driving towards, is that to reduce the reliance on the foreign importation of certain materials, whether that's critical minerals, which are obviously very important, rare earth minerals. We fit into that context on the international storyline. But from a smaller company's point of view, we just get to be in the fortunate position where we can say we brought an industry back to the United States that had been shipped overseas 30 years ago.
Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your financing. ARS recently closed $10.5 million two-tranche offering. What kind of investor interest did you see for this round?
So there was a huge amount of interest for this financing. Like for $10 million, we had well over $30 million of interest. But I think it had to be more strategic. And so we pared back a lot of the people that were involved to smaller amounts. And it was really about putting the necessary amount of funds into areas that were necessary for things like accelerating the construction of things like the flotation plant, because we foresee big contracts coming up, potentially even to service the government in the future. And so having those kind of internal resources were very important for long-term strategy. That was the more thing. It wasn't an exercise in how much money can we take in, because obviously at that point we could have taken in much more than we did. It was about being strategic and taking what was necessary and being careful, because as well you owe the existing shareholders value on their investment, and you don't want to dilute them down.
Okay, so let's double click a little bit on how the funds are being deployed. Is the focus primarily on the mine development, processing, or corporate expansion?
So there's two very important aspects here. Is that we have our initial mining operation, and we have our delineated ore bodies, and we're going to be attacking those initially. Because it is a non-contiguous deposit type right across the Spore Mountain area, what we want to do is go and open up secondary and tertiary mine sites. So while we're mining, get the drilling going on those, get the mine plans built out, get those commissioned and operational so we can maximize the output from the Spore Mountain area. So that's one aspect. And the other aspect is the processing side. We do have two plants. We've spoken a bit more about the metallurgical lumps plant, but the flotation plant is the one which we need to accelerate, because we want to be able to produce that higher grade product, that acid spar that's used in things like uranium enrichment or fluorine or hydrofluoric acid production. Those kind of things are very important to us. So we want to accelerate the building of that plant so we have the two lines of products so we can produce two different items for industry.
Okay, so given the scale of this raise, do you have enough capital to reach sustainable revenue growth generation?
So we're in a very nice situation, is that the bulk of the capital that we needed for the operation, we've already raised and spent, and we've got the industrial land, we've got the warehousing, we've got the plants, we've got one of them almost completed construction, we've got all the heavy mining equipment, we've got the rail spur, we've got the mine built out with all of it, the shotcreting, the rock bolts, the ventilation's all installed, the heavy mining equipment, all of that is done. So this money that we've raised is for things on top of that. It's for accelerating the construction of the plant, for delineating other mine sites. But like the bulk of what we needed to do and what we needed to raise and spend has already been done. So this raise was done pretty much after 95% of what needed to be done has already been completed.
Let's go beyond Utah. Are there any other North American projects or acquisitions you're evaluating that could fit into the same fast production profile?
Oh, 100%. Like, for instance, like Fluorspar is going to be a big growth industry, especially with re-industrialization, especially with the fact that lithium-ion batteries are becoming an increasing commodity. And there's more fluorspar in a lithium-ion battery than there is lithium, which is not well known about. So it's a big growth potential here. And there are other mines that are in a very similar one to ours that were shut down during when China was industrializing and it flooded the market with cheap fluorspar. China now has gone from being a net exporter to a net importer of fluorspar. And so a lot of that domestic production is shifting back to the United States, to Canada and elsewhere. So how it looks for us now is that there's this enormous potential, because there is this reindustrialization effect, of other projects that we want to buy into, to develop and commission. And we've already identified a few. And obviously there's a benefit of having projects that are nearer to our Utah mine, that we can utilize our facilities like our plants to put that mined ore in. So expansion is definitely on the horizon, and we're analyzing projects currently to do that. But beyond that, this could be a whole North American venture. There are companies we're talking to about potential mergers. Maybe there are going to be acquisitions. But the nice part is that there's a lot of blue sky here. And like we're a very flexible company. We're quite dynamic, and we're very open to propositions. And as long as they make sense, we'll expand appropriately.
Okay, so final question. Let's zoom out. How do you see the company evolving over the next 12 to 18 months as you transition from a developer to a producer?
It's a great question, because in the very near term, we're going to shift from that junior mining company status to manufacturing company when that first plant becomes available, and we can start selling product directly to people like the steel industry and big industry in general. When we get that second plant coming online sometime around about mid next year, mid 2026, then we become a bit more of an expanded operation, and we're supplying different products to very sophisticated industries, the chemical industry, the uranium enrichment industry. Big markets like that suddenly become more open to us, and so our expansion potential becomes quite large. So during that time, concurrently, we'll explore opening up more mines at the Spore Mountain site, so we can begin dragging that material out and upgrading our operation and increasing the capacity. And long term, we're going to be looking at, as we mentioned, mergers, acquisitions, all those kind of things to expand our reach. And this is an area where we're going to be very uniquely situated to expand, because we now have the expertise. We understand the metallurgy. We understand the markets. And so we're uniquely positioned to expand into that, maybe beyond anybody else's position to expand into that market. So we're in a very comfortable position now with the company.
Fantastic, James. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for having me on.
So joining me today was James Walker, CEO of ARS Strategic Mining, ticker symbol ARS on the CSE. Thank you and take care.